Welcome, listeners, to the Astoria Filmmakers Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Jim Galizia.
Hi, I'm Victoria Fragnito, and today on our podcast, we're going to have Phil Cappadora as our day player. Phil is the founder of the Astoria Filmmakers Club, or the AFC, the wonderful group that brings you this podcast. We're going to talk to him a little bit about how he got into acting and filmmaking. We're going to talk about the AFC, and we're also going to talk about his favorite movie, the movie he selected for us to watch, which is Rocky. Which I'm glad he picked that one because I thought I had seen it, but if I recall correctly, first time I ever watched that movie, I was a little kid, and it was some sort of marathon on TV, and I watched the first Rocky movie, and it wasn't compelling to a little kid because it's a lot of talking, not a huge bunch of action until you get to the fight at the end of the film. So I would tell everybody, yeah, I've seen it, but in actuality, I didn't really see it and absorb the film. And so now I'm glad I got a chance to rewatch it.
The adult version of you needed to see it so you can appreciate it. Because it's a really slow movie until they get to the fight scenes, which is great because it really shows the human side of these people. Sometimes you forget these guys that are fighting in like the MMA ring or like the WWE or something. You know, they're regular people. They go home to their families and, you know, trying to live normal lives. And then they also beat the shit out of each other. It's kind of like boxing too is one of the probably most intense sports out there because you can literally, like, people have died boxing.
Yeah.
And if you watch enough Rocky, if you watch that marathon, you'll see some people go out, which is pretty crazy. And it's crazy. This franchise has been around forever. Mm-hmm. We're talking Rocky 1 came out in 1976. So it's just credit to Rocky. I think it's got, how many sequels? There's Rocky 4, Rocky 5, Rocky Balboa, I guess, is Rocky 6, technically. Mm-hmm. And then 2 Creed movies on top of that. So, you know, 7, 8 movies later.
Yeah.
But you gotta love Rocky. It's a great movie. I love fight movies. I love any sports movies. I'm not a big sports fan myself. Like, I don't watch baseball. I don't watch basketball. But a good movie about it, still I can appreciate because, you know, there's something about winning that you love. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big twist of Rocky is that everybody was like, he's going to win. Like, because you think, like, he's the hero of the movie. And in the end, he doesn't. He split decision. It's not about him winning. It's about the fact that he can go the distance of it. Mm-hmm. And prove to everybody that he's not just some bum, some loan shark guy who's like trying to break people's legs and stuff.
And
thumbs, I always forget. Thumbs, legs, he's hurting people,
right?
Struggle. And over the course of the film, he's trying to come to terms, and you're realizing that this person is a good-hearted person doing bad things to get by. And yeah. What do you have a favorite sports or fight movie or anything like that?
Well, I wouldn't say. I mean, I've seen fight movies, like I've seen Southpaw and that kind of thing. But I think my favorite sports movie would be a toss-up, and it tends to be baseball movies, either Major League or Angels in the Outfield.
Those are both really good movies.
Yeah.
I gotta say, my favorite sports movie is probably The Longest Yard, because of how funny it is.
I actually haven't seen that one.
Oh, it's so good. It's like the pinnacle, just football and Adam Sandler mashed into one.
So you're talking about the remake, not the original with Burt Reynolds. Okay.
Yes, because Burt Reynolds is in the second one. He's in the remake, where it's just a comedy. I never saw the original. I assume the original's not a dumb comedy like the one I'm talking about. But Burt Reynolds plays like the other coach in the new version. And it's just Adam Sandler, and they basically took all the WWE actors and said, you are all massive and terrifying. Let's put you in this movie and have you play football against each other. And it's just, there's comedians in it. There's Chris Rock is in it. It's a great movie. It's so fun. Yeah.
Well, there's something about sports movies, especially because I would say probably 9 out of 10 sports movies, the team that you're following, their story, they win, whatever it is. But you still get excited at the end when they, win the game and do the thing, even though you know that it's coming, you still get swept up in it and the emotion of it. You still are so invested in the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a scenario of like credit to the filmmakers who can make you feel like you're in it. Because if you feel like, oh, I'm a part of this, I'm a part of this team, or I'm involved in the story, you'll be invested in the whole process of it, which is great. So when they finally get to the end and they win, you're like, we did it, but it's not you.
No, you weren't a part of it. Yeah. Well, it's interesting though. When I was reading an article the other day, and it was just about when actors really got hurt during filming, and obviously a lot of the times people were really like hit were during fight movies and boxing movies, like in Southpaw. Jake Gyllenhaal really went for it, and in the Rocky films too. Sylvester Stallone had to make the call to like legitimately get hit in a lot of the shots, because there's a difference in when you do stage fighting and stage combat for theater and when you're creating violence for film. A lot of times, because the camera is so close and it's so hard to fake those angles, you just can't.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways to do it. A good fight choreographer will tell you that's completely false, and they have ways. But I don't know if back in '76, fight choreography was not as developed as it probably is today. I feel like anybody who studies jiu-jitsu for 20 minutes is like, I'm a fight choreographer, I can do anything. But the basic cheat is that you're cheating the distance that the punch, let's just say it's a punch, and the person's face is. So the punch might go here, but the way the camera sees it is it's hitting.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it just depends on the angle and how you film it. And any fight scene you have, at least any fight scene that's well put together, you have to imagine that not only are they choreographing what punches to throw and blocks, and the two people that are fighting each other are choreographing all that, there's camera choreography. Where's the camera going to be? How's the viewer going to see this? Because it might look cool from one angle, but the other angle you're going to see, oh, they're not even hitting each other. I just watched a movie on Netflix called Extraction with Chris Hemsworth, and the fight choreography in that is bananas. Like, I think at one point Chris Hemsworth is fighting 3 guys with like machetes, and they all come at him, and he's got a pistol, and he kills them all at no range with a pistol. Like, he's like grabbing stuff and he's blocking with a pistol. It's just absurd violence, but it's Chris Hemsworth, so it's great and it's fun. Pretty good performance from him too. It's fun to see a big action movie when the actor actually performs really well, because sometimes you have a movie like Expendables that is certainly not, like, I wouldn't write home and say Sylvester Stallone's best performance was from Expendables. It's really not. It's in your face nonsense action. And I think fight movies, though, they're a little bit more grounded. Once you involve like guns or big action explosions, it becomes less grounded.
Yeah.
But anything where it's just 2 people beating the crap out of each other, that's potentially a great movie. Have you ever seen Warrior?
No.
Warrior is another great movie to watch. Tom Hardy is in it. Anything Tom Hardy does is great.
Yeah.
Totally drawing a blank on the other actors. There's a bunch of big name actors in there. Essentially 2 brothers that haven't spoken to each other in a very long time, both join this MMA fight tournament because they need the money. And one of them just wants to fight. He's ex-military, and his whole kind of story of how he saved a bunch of people comes out, but then his war buddy, I think, got killed during that mission, so he wound up leaving the military when he wasn't supposed to. I forget what that's called, but he runs off, abandons the military, which is, you can go to jail for that for a very long time. And then joins this MMA tournament, which is like big Las Vegas tournament, and his face is plastered all over the place. So he's trying to like not go to jail, but also wants to be a part of this tournament and win this fight, only to find out that his brother, who's a high school teacher at this point, is also in the tournament. And the high school teacher's got no money. He gets suspended because he picked up a small fight to get some extra money to pay some bills. Winds up getting suspended and can't teach. So he's like, fuck it, I guess I have to go in 100% and do this big tournament. And they have to wind up fighting each other in the end. Two brothers that barely speak to each other. Very, very emotional, gritty, fun fight story. Definitely worth a watch if you have the time.
Okay.
So now you have some homework. You got to watch the movie Upgrade. I've been telling you to watch that.
Yeah.
You got to watch Upgrade. You have to watch Extraction. You have to watch Warriors. Just a lot of violence. About 6.5, 9 hours of violence there.
Well, violence makes for good TV.
Yeah. Especially, too, these movies, too, that I'm mentioning, it's not just violence. There's good story and character development. Upgrade is a little more in-your-face sci-fi nonsense. But Warriors, very good character development. Great performances. Rocky is probably one of the best character developing movies. Yeah. I love fight movies. There's so much potential for them that, when a movie comes out and it really exceeds your expectations and you think you're going to just see some cool boxing and you wind up seeing a whole big story for it, it's great.
Well, yeah, because in Rocky, honestly, you don't see that. The boxing is all at the end. You see that little fight at the beginning. You see him punch a dead cow carcass, and then you see the fight at the end.
Yeah.
So, most of the film is just character development and story development. And, that's one of the reasons why I didn't get hooked into it as a kid is like, you're just sitting there listening to grown-ups talk, I don't get what this movie feel, Mom. Like,
I thought he was going to punch someone.
Yeah, that's the exciting part.
You just have to wait 2 hours and he'll punch somebody. Don't worry, it'll happen. You'll appreciate this when you're older.
Which I do.
Yeah. Is there any other movies that you watched when you were young and now that you're older you can kind of appreciate it more?
I'm sure there are. I don't know if I can think of them off the top of my head. I know there are some movies I watched when I was younger that I was like, should I have been allowed to watch this when I remember watching it?
Like what? Now I need an example.
One I just rewatched recently is Victor Victoria. It's from 1980. And it stars Julie Andrews. And the whole thing is actually pretty ahead of its time. It takes place during the Great Depression in France. And Julie Andrews' character, Victoria Grant, is an opera singer. She's broke. She auditions at this club. She gets turned down. So she ends up meeting this man named Toddy, who happens to be gay, and he's a singer. And he figures out that she would be an incredible drag act. So this whole time what happens is she's a woman pretending to be a man, pretending to be a woman. And she puts on this whole cabaret show. She ends up falling in love with this gangster who has all of these like questions like, I was attracted to that person as a woman, and now that person took off their wig and that person is a man. Am I attracted to men? And it gets into all the minutia of sexuality and how and your self-confidence and
it's like a double sell.
And it takes place, during the 30s, in the Depression. So you definitely couldn't be gay back then, all of that. So I remember watching it as like a young kid. And when I didn't understand any of this, like sexuality talk and all of that stuff. So now that I'm older, I'm like, well, I can't believe I watched that when I feel like I just wanted to watch it because my name was in the title, like Victor Victoria, but I don't think. Yeah. But I definitely didn't get it when I was a kid, for sure.
Yeah, that's all.
But that's
that's all adult themes right there for sure. I can't think of a movie that I watched as a kid. I actually wasn't able to watch movies as a kid during the school week. So Monday through Friday, just no TV. I had to read books, and I hated it. I liked it at the time, and I liked it at first, but it was like, all right, if I read a book a week, can I watch some TV too? Like, I'm still reading. I just don't want to do only reading. My parents were like, no, you're going to be smart.
And then you crushed their dreams and went to film school.
Right. Well, once I got to like high school, my parents, backed off on it a little bit and let me watch TVs and movies and stuff. And as soon as I got into it, it was like, cool, figured it out. But who knows? I mean, maybe if I had always been able to watch TV, maybe I would have been like, I need this because I never had it. You know what I mean? Maybe if they'd never let me read books, I would have grown up and been like, I really just want to read books. That's the thing I can't have. You want what you can't have.
I wish parents would learn that.
Right. Like right now, I want to go outside, but I can't because COVID. So COVID's just parenting us right now. It's just teaching us, stay inside. Fucking pay attention to people that are experts. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So we have our day player today. Our guest for the show is Phil Cappadora. He brought a clip from something that he's performed in, he's acted in, called Village Music. It's his first project that he was an actor on. And we're going to show a little clip, and then we're going to bring him on. We're going to talk to him about the AFC. We're going to talk to him about his clip and the future of the club, the Astoria Filmmakers Club, and his movie choice, Rocky. We'll talk about that in a little bit more. We'll do a deep dive on it.
Who are you texting?
A girl.
Mom? Sister?
No, it's this girl, Erica.
Nice. Good looking?
I don't know. Actually, I haven't seen her yet. We met online on one of those sites.
You're 19.
No, I know, but it was a good site. Like, we've been talking on and off each day, and, I got a date with her tonight.
Good?
And, I can tell her everything. She's so easy to talk to. And, things work out. Maybe meet her parents. She could be the one.
You never know.
I know.
You never know.
Yeah, but I know.
Hey guys.
Hey, Rose.
Hi.
How you guys doing?
Shh.
He shushes for text messages?
He shushes for everything.
So how you been?
Not too bad. No real complaints.
It's always good. Can you see if my 11 o'clock canceled?
Shh. Yeah, sure. Just give me a second. I don't know what I'm looking for.
I'll show you. Alright.
Yeah.
Alright, it's just computer, schedules, and then Rose Eloise. Yeah, he canceled.
That sucks.
Yep. Now I've got some time to kill though, before my next lesson. Maybe I'll get some lunch.
Or you could just go home and come back at 1.
Yeah, you could. Alright, I'm gonna go to the bank while I've got some time, so I'll see ya.
Alright.
Bye.
What happened, man? I mean, were your spider senses not tingling? Was there a glitch in the Matrix? I mean, was the Force not with you?
Alright, listen, nerd. What are you talking about?
She likes you, okay? Hi, I'm Rose. I want to date you, but you're too thick to see any of the signs,
She's got a boyfriend, man. They've been dating since high school.
I don't know. From what I heard, she's recently single.
All right. Thank you, Phil, for bringing in that clip from Village Music. Tell us a little bit about that clip.
That was my first short film. It was a student project done at Orange County Community College in 2009. And that film was, just like like looking back on it now, it was probably it was the most authentic feeling I've ever had as an actor, because it just felt so like natural the whole time. I was very new to acting. I only had taken a semester before in acting class, improv class. And when I watched it at the premiere with all the student filmmakers and a bunch of our acting peers, I did not recognize myself on screen. I was so engaged in the story and the way they told the story, and seeing me on screen, I did not even recognize myself. It was like, I almost can't even explain it. It was like I actually watched a real performance, in a sense, because I never knew I could do that.
That's cool. I wonder how sometimes actors might feel. Like, does Joaquin Phoenix get that feeling when he sees himself in the Joker? Does he go, is that the Joker, or is that just me in some stupid makeup? You know?
It's kind of, it's surreal watching yourself. Some actors hate it. Like Adam Driver refuses to watch anything of himself. He walks out of interviews if they even start playing it.
He's missing out, because Adam Driver is a fantastic human being.
Yeah. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't mind watching myself. I know sometimes I'm like, oh, I could have done that better. Or I could have done something else. And sometimes watching my previous performances, I get engaged, and that's when I try and remember like what I did right to get completely engaged in watching my performance. I did something that connected really well. But that's awesome that you can look back at like your first film and feel that way. That's really cool.
Yeah, and sometimes when people would talk about it, because I still have my friends from college talking about the movie and how it led me to go to acting school. Immediately after that film, I got accepted into the New York Conservatory for Dramatic Arts the following year. And then I see here I got my plaque of certificate of validation from Harold Baldridge from the Neighborhood Playhouse in 2012. It's like I could actually connect like the foundation of my training and my education, and it just comes full circle to see where I am now, where it's just like this, like it's validating in a sense, Victoria?
Yeah, I do. So what actually led you to start the Astoria Filmmakers Club?
The lack of work. So it came like when you come from a very small pond like Orange County, and you come here to the big city, you're in the middle of the Atlantic. So every fish is here, everything is here. What me and my friend JJ actually found out is that we don't really like know anybody here. So like we're doing everything we can, doing backstage, doing Actors Access, trying to find the right work, build our network. But over a course of the last like 7 years, it just seemed to plateau, and just seemed like now we're not like really on the mountaintop anymore. Now we're just somewhere in the middle of a valley somewhere. So we decided to, let's just see if we could put up a beacon and maybe attract people to come to us, and then just start from scratch, completely start over, take all the experience that we learned, and then why not just create our own stuff? We got the to actually have a little bit more creative control on what we want to actually do. We know what it's like to do the work of other visionaries as filmmakers and writers. We've served the script. We know how to do that. What can we do to actually now serve our craftsmanship? So that's what led to the Astoria Filmmakers Club, because now this is a way that everybody could actually expand on their craftsmanship in order to get better, and we would do it collectively.
Very cool.
So it started in August, and here we are.
Yeah, it's crazy that it started in just August. It's almost coming up on a year. I only joined come like October, November, I think. And I remember on day one, you were like, we should start a podcast. And I was like, I'd love to do a podcast. And you were like, all right, you're going to do it. It's all you. And then I roped in Victoria, and we built it up. We were ready to start filming live and in person. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
But we adapted. We found a way, and we are here. How do you think COVID has affected the AFC? What are people doing? Are people still doing things regardless of COVID?
Yeah, because the reputation of the Astoria Filmmakers Club is based on getting people better. So people who want to become better, they're finding a way to get in touch with us. And most recently, we had somebody who, through my church group, she wants to actually do a promotional video about her fashion line. So now we're going to be exploring how we could actually tell a story visually with fashion as our script and create a story out of that. I actually had a meeting about that about 2 hours ago.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I've been working for a long time with my buddy about how to. He's starting a clothing line, so I'm sure that's very similar, but it's tricky because you want to have the right image, and once you have the right image, you can move forward and do the right thing. But that's pretty cool. People are, definitely stuck at home right now. Filmmakers. I'm sure there's a lot of people in the AFC or not in the AFC that are sitting around just writing, editing, working on their craft, trying to tell their stories and come up with different ideas. I know Clay is working on a story. Clay is a member of the AFC. He's working on a project called The New Normal, and he wants to rope in some AFC people. There's a lot of people in the club that are working on projects and can really benefit from teaming up with other people in the club, because I'm a camera person, but if I have no one film, I'm just a camera guy filming nothing. I can go outside and film a tree, but there's no story there. Maybe there is, but
Well, with time lapse, it's just like, did COVID stop this leaf from blossoming? No, it did not.
That's people are the only things affected. Dogs aren't. There's nature is like improving. Like there's already like whales in the Hudson or something like that. It's like,
yeah,
like Avengers Endgame when all the animals and plant life come back in full force.
Yeah, just from a couple of years of just human conflict.
Yeah,
It puts a lot of things into perspective because we set the rules, like as a species, even as a nation, and more so now as a generation, because we're inheriting now everything. Like now it's our turn.
right. Well, assuming we get through this COVID nightmare, what is the future for the AFC? Where's it going? What's the goal for the club?
The sustainability of the Astoria Filmmakers Club comes down to those who are members, who are the visionaries, who want to actually be a part of it. I'm building something in a way where it's going to be 100% self-sustaining, where it could run without me involved. Like if I want to leave something in a machine right here in the heart of Astoria, where it could actually run itself and be self-sustaining with all the artists within our neighborhood to contribute to it and get out of it to actually enhance their own craft. So if I were to die one day and that machine is implemented like it cannot move, that right there is the ultimate goal. I want this to outlive me.
Very cool. So you want to build that community, you want to have people working together and creating some cool projects. And regardless if you're alive or not, hopefully you stay alive for a very long time, Phil.
I'd like to have some influence while I'm here.
Yeah. So talk to us a little more about your acting career. So you worked on Village Music, was your first project. What's the name, some of the stuff you've done since then?
The only thing notable would be Good Time by the Safdie brothers. I got a break where I got to arrest Robert Pattinson in the final scene of the film. And it was amazing because there's no way to become an actor, that famous guy, get your big break. There's no set path. You have to really create your own, and you have to think outside the box, be unique. And I think it was just a bit of a miracle on how I got this break, because the guy who was actually supposed to be the arresting officer couldn't show up that day, and I was just a background actor, and it was a reshoot from 6 months prior to now, where we just had to refilm it because something went wrong. But then I was the only guy right then and there available, where Ben Safdie said, "What about Phil?" And I got the part. So no real dialogue in that scene. I had a little dialogue of another cop upstairs, like banging on the door, but nobody knows it was me. And then you had my face now being the arresting officer, putting Robert Pattinson in the paddy wagon and then running to find the dead body of Buddy Duress.
Eventually the Batman is going to come out, and that scene can totally find a way to be intercut with it, and you're arresting Batman.
I mean, Robert Pattinson, like he's taller than me, and it would be I can't wait to actually see now this next generation of Batman, because this goes back to like day one in acting for me in 2008, where we got to see The Dark Knight, that whole series, and it ended with like right around with Heath Ledger, and then there was Bane, and of course you had Catwoman. So I mean, it's just like that whole universe, and like for me, I understand the universe of Batman, and now we got the next generation where it's only like now what, barely 10 years later. What's our next story? Because I really thought they were going to be focusing more on Robin, you know, with Gordon Levitt. What's his name?
Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Joseph, yes.
They kind of hinted at
that,
that, and it was like a thing where I just don't think Christopher Nolan wants to do it. But at the same time, if Christopher Nolan doesn't do it, I don't want it to happen because it's going to be weird.
I really don't like, because I just watched the new Jane and Silent Bob movie where they're now like really talking about the reboot effect, where 10 years from now, if we don't come up with something original, there's not going to be anything 10 years from now. So right now we're in a bit of a, I think we're coming into a pit where we literally have to start moving back up out of it. And to their point, the story of Batman has been told. We know the story of Batman, and it's immortal. Like, we could still watch Val Kilmer as Batman from 20 years ago with Nicole Kidman. And we had like 6 or 7 different takes on Batman, but now we're just getting reboot. Batman. What about the other people in the universe? I really thought they were going to go based off something about Robin. I really thought that would have been a little bit more interesting to kind of like maybe set us up for something 10 years from now.
Yeah. Well, they did a spinoff for Halle Berry, Catwoman, and that was terrible.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Like, maybe the story wasn't there, but then again, I was a teenager and I'm like, yeah, I love this.
You just want Halle Berry and some leather. That's all it is.
Yeah, I thought she was fire. Like, if you were to have like Anne Hathaway versus Halle Berry as Catwoman and let 2 experts on Catwoman go at it, I would really like to listen to that podcast or see like how that fight would end up.
I mean, I'm curious to see Zoe Kravitz. Is that who's playing the new Catwoman in the Batman? That's going to be really cool.
I haven't heard anything about the storyline with Robert Pattinson's next generation of Batman.
I don't know about the story. Just the cast itself sounds so good that I'm like going to see this movie whether it's trash or not. Okay. Like Matthew McConaughey as Two-Face. Like, just fantastic.
Okay, now
Colin Farrell is the Penguin.
Who?
Colin Farrell.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, because he played that Bullseye guy in Daredevil once upon a time. So him coming back into the mix where it's just like Chris Evans was once like what's his name? The Human Torch. Yeah. And now he's Captain America. So just like they're kind of keeping the same actors in a loop and they're finding the perfect fit for them. Now just hearing Matthew McConaughey, I'm curious. Now I'd like to see.
Yeah.
I truly am. He might be my favorite actor right now.
Who's the other actor? Is it Tim Dano? Tom Dano?
Paul Dano.
Yeah, Tom. He was in Sully?
I think. I don't know.
Are you talking about Paul Dano?
Is it Paul Dano?
Who played Two-Face, right?
No, that's Matthew McConaughey is going to play Two-Face.
No, from the old one with
Val Kilmer? That was Tommy Lee Jones.
No, not Val Kilmer. Come on, Phil. I know this with Christian Bale.
Oh, Aaron Eckhart.
Aaron. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking of Paul Dano. He's a young actor. He's been in a couple of things. There Will Be Blood, Little Miss Sunshine. He is playing the Riddler in the new Batman movie. That's going to be really cool, too.
I still, you can't beat Jim Carrey.
Yeah, but people said you couldn't beat Jack Nicholson as the Joker, and Heath Ledger came out. So after that, I have stopped saying, that performance is the be all to end all. Because then people were saying that about Heath Ledger, and you got Joaquin Phoenix coming in. Mm-hmm. And so I will never, ever again say this is the definitive performance of this.
I think it really separates the expertise on the actor himself, because they could perform the absolute understanding on their approach to the character and just focus on that one specific detail. Because what Joaquin did was actually focus completely on the humanity of the Joker, as well as somebody who has a mental health disorder. This is the behavior of a mental health disorder, not so much like the sociopathic criminal psychology of just wanting to see the world burn that Heath Ledger did so well. They specifically had two different approaches, which were just so unique and parallel in a sense, where they actually don't cross, other than the image of Joker himself. So that for me was just what I took from it, is that these guys focused on one specific thing about the Joker and just made it all about that one thing. And that's what made it believable, because that is the truth of that kind of behavior.
Yeah. I love that filmmaking allows people to tell stories in different ways. So you can take two characters or two stories that are the same, like the Joker, and tell their stories in two completely different ways. Depends on the artists involved. You know, they're all artists. Christopher Nolan, drawing a blank on the name of the guy who made the Joker, but basically two different filmmakers, two of the same character, but made very different, and still both phenomenal. I still prefer Heath Ledger over Joaquin Phoenix. I think Joaquin Phoenix did great, but overall, I feel like The Dark Knight's a better movie, if that makes sense.
I could agree. There were two different generations, though, because we saw Bruce Wayne when he was just a kid, and we saw the guy who was basically the clown that might have inspired the Joker to arise, parallel to the youth of Bruce Wayne, because they went toe-to-toe later on. So it wasn't so much about the conflict and the rivalry of Batman versus the Joker. It was really like now what actually kind of like maybe put Gotham City into the direction that created the Joker himself.
Yeah. I don't want to see a Joker 2. I just want it to sit on its own as what it is. I think doing a Joker 2 would be a little weird. I don't know.
I don't know.
It made $1 billion. They're going to make a sequel.
Yeah.
I'm drawing blanks on names, but we just had, Suicide Squad, and you got the Joker in that, who just has a totally different take on the joke of the Joker, where it's just like way too to the left, you know?
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of Jared Leto's Joker. It was too much for me. Just weird. He had
I love the effort, though. Like, I loved his commitment. I really do.
I mean, dude dyed his hair green. Jared Leto's no joke. He weirdly enough too, he came out and said he went away for like a meditation retreat or whatever. And then coronavirus hit. And when coronavirus hit, he came back to civilization like a week and a half into it and was like, what happened? Like, what did I miss? Because he totally was like without a phone, no technology, just sitting on a rock meditating. Very weird, dude.
As an actor, honestly, I would love the opportunity to try work like that. I don't think I've been challenged as an actor to really explore a character trait that's so dynamic to like who I am, Phil, as a person. And I would personally like to take a shot at the Joker. Maybe not, definitely not now. I'm kind of young in a sense, but I don't know. I feel like I want to explore that. Like that's a challenge I think I would like to try. Find out more about this guy. What's his behavior and why is he the villain? Who is he? Because I love villains. I really do, to tell a story. Only because George R.R. Martin really just neutralized hero and villain, where it's just like he might be like Daenerys Targaryen. She might have been sort of like the villain at the end of the whole Game of Thrones show, but George R.R. Martin actually said to someone else, and that's what creates that dynamic. So if ever I were to play the Joker, I would want to find out, who is this guy a hero to?
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it, because they say too that villains are just the heroes of their own stories. But yeah, so not that he's a villain, but no, there's a bad segue, but let's talk about your favorite movie, Rocky. Why did you choose Rocky?
You know, I chose Rocky because of, I grew up as an athlete, and just like maybe watching Rocky the night before a big game just kind of neutralized whatever fear I might have. Is that just like at the end of the game, I would always just come out still standing, even though I probably have bruises all over me. I'll probably get my bell rung, get a concussion that day, but I know that I'm going to be standing at the end of that game. And that really carried me through my entire athletic career. And when I actually once I actually really learned now about Sylvester Stallone how that story really came to pass, and how I could relate now as Phil the actor to Sylvester Stallone. I just have like now a complete rounded appreciation and respect for this guy, you know, where I just like really could actually say, you know what, he stayed true to himself, and he did what he did, commit to himself, and he didn't sell out, you know. So even still now, because of that, I appreciate Rocky even more, because that right there and his commitment got him to be where he is today. And he's 50 years in the business, and the guy is a beast. You know, he's still in, like, he just did Rambo, like, and again, and he's still in phenomenal shape. And we love Sylvester Stallone, and I really respect this man.
He is going to be, and it's not even an exaggeration, in 2026, that'll be his 50 years in the business, because Rocky was probably his first big movie, and 1976 we're talking about, which is pretty crazy.
And before that, it was a little film that is never talked about, but it was called Paradise Alley.
Paradise Alley, that's cool.
Yeah, Paradise Alley. It was about three brothers, a guy that looked exactly like Marlon Brando, only ridiculously huge, and Armand Desante. Three brothers, just kind of stuck going nowhere. Yeah. But it was about wrestling, so they tried to have a little spin-off of like wrestling.
Some people can make their careers because they look like an A-list actor. So like Elizabeth Olsen looks just like her sisters, so people can relate or remember. Oh, I remember the Olsen twins from Full House. And then they see this girl that looks almost exactly like you. Almost feel like you already know the person, so it's easy to like that person. I was telling Victoria about this movie Upgrade. It's a sci-fi action thriller where this guy gets a microchip planted in his head, and the microchip kind of takes control of his body and just runs him around, and he does all these crazy things. People should check it out. But the movie is probably the funniest thing about the movie is it came out almost at the same time as the movie Venom with Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
This guy in Upgrade looks exactly like Tom Hardy, just like a slightly different version of him. And they both have voices in their head that are like, I'm going to take control of your body now. And, you know, they run off and do whatever they want. So it's just kind of funny that these movies are so different, kind of telling a similar story with actors that look almost the same. But Upgrade was good, worth checking out.
I'm going to have to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for joining us, telling us about the AFC. Thank you for sharing your clip of your work and for having us rewatch Rocky. I haven't seen it in a long time, so it was good to kind of dive back into that.
I mean, you should, if ever you get a chance, like, maybe I could share this with you guys really quick, because I actually have one of the original scripts, and the story was completely different. Hold on.
Really? The original Rocky script? Old moldy paper from 70 years ago.
Kind of.
It's not.
No. So I actually looked this up on eBay. I never knew how much it was actually worth, because this was a gift to me from a guy named Chris Farlakis. He wrote my letter of recommendation after Village Music to actually go to acting school. And he really, just that little encouragement, just that little guy Mick in your corner saying, you could go the distance, man, just keep fighting. So he ended up giving me this script as a gift, because Sylvester Stallone gave him this copy of Rocky directly to him as a gift, because Chris was a journalist for the Times Herald Record for a little over 40 years before he passed away. And he actually got to interview Sylvester Stallone, and this was Sylvester Stallone's gift to him. And now this was a gift to me from Chris. And honestly, like I got to meet Sylvester Stallone really quickly on the set of Creed. 2015, I was getting nowhere in acting, so I just did every type of background job that I could find, and Creed was one of those jobs, just by word of mouth, saying, Phil, there's work in Philly, go. So I did, and I completely forgot I had this because it was in storage, but if there's ever an opportunity for me to actually get in the same room with Sylvester Stallone again, I would very much like his autograph, because Sylvester Stallone did have his hands on this copy.
Very cool.
Yeah, man.
Part of history, man. That's very sweet.
Yeah, it truly is, man. And everything is a stepping stone, you know? And I don't know what the Astoria Filmmakers Club is going to do for me, but I do believe it can do anything for its members that they want out of it. I truly do.
Cool. Well, Phil, before you go, how can people join the AFC, follow, like, subscribe, all that stuff. But how do they find us? What are the tags? What are the websites? Where do they go?
Always start with Instagram because that's the most common used. A Story of Filmmakers Club. If anybody ever DMs that, they want to know a little bit more, I'll just shoot them an email from mine or from the support group. They could always go to afc.moreinfo@gmail.com. Somebody will definitely get back to them. And if not, I'll definitely respond personally, maybe set up a Zoom meeting. We'll have a cup of COVID coffee and we'll just talk about, what it is they want and what the AFC actually is and maybe how they could actually become a part of it.
Yeah, Instagram seems like everybody's way to kind of find it, and then people start talking to people and building that community, even though we're all locked up behind doors. But if you want to find it on Instagram, it's at Astoria_filmmakers_club. Astoria Filmmakers Club.
AFC. And make sure you like and subscribe all the podcasts, because if they do join and become members, we're going to possibly have them as a day player to talk about themselves.
Yes. Day player, aka the guest of the podcast.
Yep.
Well, thank you, Phil, for being the very first one.
You guys are great. You guys are so good. Thank you so much for doing this, guys. You're the best.
No problem. We'll see you soon. Have a good one.
All right.
Well, thank you to Phil for coming on and for giving us all the information about the AFC. We're going to post all of his links and everything at the end of the podcast, so you can take a look at his projects for yourself or reach out about joining the AFC. We'd love to have you. And we're going to talk a little bit more about his film choice, Rocky.
Yeah.
So
we already kind of talked about Rocky a little bit, talking about how we watched it as kids and then didn't really appreciate it. I'd seen it a couple of times, but it's also tough because all the Rocky movies, they kind of fit into one cohesive story. So sometimes I watch Rocky 3 or Rocky 2 or Rocky 4, and I'm like, it's all the same. It all fits together. But watching just Rocky singularly as itself standalone movie, I think was a different experience because I wasn't thinking about it like, all right, there's 7 more movies after this. I was thinking of it like, this is the start, this is the finish. What if the story had ended here? That's an interesting concept too, of things like movies that, especially now, we're spoiled with like the Marvel universe and stuff. There's Iron Man, and then there's every movie 20 movies later that have come out since then.
right.
Are we losing that sense of a movie starting and a movie finishing and it being over?
I don't think we are. I mean, we still have movies that do that. We just have a lot more now that don't do that. It used to be one movie, that's it. One movie, that's it. Maybe a sequel here and there. And I honestly don't think when they made the first Rocky that they expected to have 7 sequels come out of it. But, and that's the nice thing about watching the first one and the one that started it all, is you get to see a little bit about why they wanted the story to continue, because it is such a compelling story, and you want to see what happens to him after he goes the distance with Apollo Creed, and
it's one of the longest running franchises. It's started in 1976. It's older than Star Wars. Is that right? When was Star Wars? 78?
77, I think, was the first
7, I think.
Star Wars. Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty crazy that if you think about it, Rocky is older than Luke Skywalker. How long they've been around. Rocky is a 1976 American sports drama film directed by John G. Avildsen. I don't know if I said that right, but it's written and starring Sylvester Stallone. He wrote it as well. He got $1 million budget for it, and after some advertising costs of $4.2 million, which is crazy that it cost $1 million to make the movie, but $4.5 million to really just tell people about it. It's crazy. So $5.6 million budget in the end, and it brought in $225 million and became the highest grossing film of 1976, which is like a 90%, or what is that? 400% return or something, like just a crazy amount of profit on that. It's very successful. There's a reason it spawned 6-7 sequels. Yeah, I love the Creed movies as well.
Yeah, I think, After a while, if the movies are not good, they stop making them. But I think the interesting thing about the Rocky movies is they do eventually take different directions. It's not always about Rocky. There's enough character in these other people that you want to see what happens to the people around him. So, spawning off with the Creed movies. I mean, Apollo Creed is a fascinating character, and you want to see, the other people in his life. So follow the story of his son after he passes away. People want to see that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the Creed 2 was awesome in terms of like they brought back the characters from Rocky 4, Drago and Drago's son, and that relationship that they had with Drago's son's mother. I forget her name. But it was just such a interesting thing to see the two sons of these two guys that fought in the ring, and one of them died. Now they're in the ring, and it's like a lineage thing too. People love that. I'm sure they're going to make a Creed 3 and wrap it all up in a nice bow as a trilogy, but you never know. Rocky, had 6 of his own movies before Creed came along.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking 76, 79, 1982, 1985, 1990, and 2006 were all the different Rocky movies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then Rocky Balboa was 2006. And then 9 years later, we got the first Creed movie in 2015. 2018, we got Creed 2. Stallone portrays Rocky in all of the 8 movies, and he wrote 7 of the 8 films, which is kind of wild.
Yeah.
Which, when I think Sylvester Stallone, I just think of him beating the crap out of people and blowing stuff up and boxing and fighting people. I don't think of him sitting behind a computer or with a pen and pad, writing stories that are complex and cool and interesting and really have good character development. But it's really cool to know that he's been doing that for almost 50 years.
That's insane.
Yeah. It should be noted that we could have gotten a very different Rocky as well. There were other actors that were considered for the role, like Robert Redford, Ryan O'Neal, Burt Reynolds, or James Caan. They all almost played Rocky.
Obviously now when you see Stallone in it, you can't picture anybody else. And not to say that any of those actors would have given a bad performance or anything, because they're all phenomenal, but you just can't see anybody besides Stallone playing that part. And it's just a testament to his confidence, and it's such a testament to him that he held out and he didn't say, okay, you can buy the script and put whoever you want in it. He wrote that for himself. Yeah. And he knew himself as an actor, and he was like, this role is mine. This is what the role was created for me by me. So the only way this is getting made is if I am Rocky. And it's a good thing he stuck to his guns, because I don't know if the film would have had the impact that it has had if anyone else had played that role.
Yeah, I'm sure if Robert Redford had taken on the role at the time too, it would have been a great movie. But would it have spawned 7 sequels? I don't know. They're also talking about doing another movie about the life of Rocky Balboa before the first Rocky movie, which is interesting, like a prequel. I don't know if that story should exist. We've talked about this before in terms of like, that's Rocky's story, is him being, maybe it'll show him having a promising boxing future, and then he kind of gives it up to become this like loan shark. And it's just like a tragedy story of how he fell down. Because Rocky, we see him at his lowest points, and then he kind of rises to the occasion. Mm-hmm. So maybe we see the opposite happen in this origin story of sorts. Who do you think would play Sylvester Stallone's Rocky in the prequel version of a young Rocky?
Because they already got Milo Ventimiglia to play his son in Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, and that was the worst Rocky movie, so.
But I mean, Milo, I feel like would have been a good choice.
I mean, he's a little older now too. Maybe like he could just do that, and they just make fun of it. Like basically it's crazy how many punches that this guy took, and now he looks like Sylvester Stallone.
I mean, I don't know. I think maybe one of the smartest choices they can do is just, instead of trying to put a name to it, because people are gonna want to see it. It's a Rocky movie. People will pay money to see it. So one of the advantages they have with that is, instead of getting a big name for the lead role of Rocky, they can get a lesser known actor who actually looks and portrays the character much better. Instead of having to be locked into that, we need a big name to sell this film, which is constantly an issue. They actually have a little bit more freedom there. Whether they take it or not is, yet to be seen. But
yeah, who knows?
Bigger names in, as a young, because you've got the whole history with Mick and how, he said, Mick wasn't around for him when he was young and up and coming and all that. You can get a bigger name for a young Mick and do that.
Oh, that's a good fan cast too. Who would play a young Mick? And just be like, you could have been a fucking fighter, Rocky. Come at him hard, and then he abandons him, and Mick is like broken because he's given up on this great life he could have had as a fighter. There's a number of talented actors out there. I feel like if we're going to see a Rocky origin story, he had to have been like 25, 30 in the events of Rocky, give or take.
He was 30. I think he actually says it in the film.
So, if we're going to see a young version of him, I imagine it's something like, maybe we see him coming up as a teenager, and we kind of see him into his early 20s and stuff, and maybe in his prime of when he would have been a great fighter or a great boxer. Mm-hmm. Who knows? Who knows the state of affairs too? Because this was just something that hit news July 2019. Now in this current state of affairs, maybe Stallone's sitting at home writing it out because of coronavirus. He's got the time.
Yeah.
Who knows what he's up to? I see him on Instagram every once in a while. He's got 3 beautiful daughters, a lovely wife, and he's probably sitting at home and just hanging out, I saw him watching Tiger King, and they all dressed up as different characters from Tiger King, which is kind of funny.
Oh, God.
Yeah. The peak of cinema right there. Tiger King.
Tiger King.
But who knows what's going on with everything with COVID and all that. Mm-hmm. I'm sure people are sitting at home writing, and that's probably a good thing to do.
I got to say, with COVID-19 and all of that, and, writing myself, I'm having a hard time motivating myself to write, especially because a lot of the stuff I'm working on right now happens to be heavier subject matter. So it makes it a little hard to want to deep dive into it. But some people, it might be their outlet, during this whole thing. They say, during the plague in the 1600s, Shakespeare, when he was stuck inside, he wrote King Lear.
Yeah.
So, you never know what's actually going to come out of this. I don't think anyone should feel pressured into, being productive during this time. But if you can, go for it, If
you need to, do it. It depends on how you deal with it. I'm personally getting through the quarantine by making this podcast and playing all the video games that I have. So replaying all the video games that I have. I recently saw someone asked the creators of the show Black Mirror, which is a very crazy show, when they would be working on season 6, and they're like, we're not doing it. There's no market right now for a show about societies collapsing in different ways. And they're just straight up like, it's too bleak right now. Like, no one wants to fantasize about the world falling apart while the world is falling apart.
Fair. Yeah. It's absolutely fair.
You have movies like Batman and Superman and all these, superhero movies where there's global catastrophes happening. I don't want to hear about that when there's actual global catastrophes going on. Mm-hmm. And yet there's some people that are going to watch movies about virus outbreaks right now.
Yeah. Well, that's when I was playing through Spider-Man at the beginning of this. I was like, why on PlayStation 4, why am I playing this game right now? Because that essentially was what's happening in New York, except for the fact that Doc Ock wasn't the reason for it, So there's a viral outbreak, and I'm playing through it, and I'm seeing people walking around, like as I'm swinging through the city as Spider-Man, I'm seeing people walk around with masks on and, signs posted everywhere about protecting yourself from the virus. And then I played Vampire, which again is the same thing. It took place during the 1918 epidemic. So I feel like
you're just going down the wrong road.
I think I am.
I mean, I did do a little bit. I played The Last of Us again, which is just basically there's a deadly virus and it's turning everyone into savage, rabies-filled monsters of sorts. And what's the other thing I watched? I watched the movie World War Z, which is literally the plot of it is just Brad Pitt walking around going, the virus, we don't know how it works. And I'm the only one that can stop it for some reason. I'm going to go all around the world to different countries, and zombies are just going to chase me everywhere. And I'm Brad Pitt.
And I'm Brad Pitt.
I'm Brad Pitt. That's what he says at the end of the movie. I'm Brad Pitt. And then the credits roll. Great movie.
Mhm.
Great games. Great content to kill your time. But if that kind of stuff isn't your thing right now, just get to writing. Get to, putting ideas down on paper. Join the AFC. Talk to some people about your ideas. If you have a cool script idea, I'm sure posting it in the Facebook group and saying, hey, I have this great idea. Would love to work on it with somebody, at least in a pre-production fashion, at least until COVID blows over, and then maybe we can actually film it. You never know.
Well, speaking of, projects during COVID, we have that giant list of all of those TV and film projects that got postponed
Oh,
due
yeah.
to all of this loveliness.
Courtesy of Variety.com, all the shows and movies shut down or delayed because of coronavirus. The list goes on. It starts with TV. We see HBO, Succession, and Barry. Netflix is The Witcher. Hulu's The Handmaid's Tale. Amazon has this $900 million budget for the Lord of the Rings series they're trying to put together.
Mm-hmm.
And they had just stopped. I think they had already started shooting in New Zealand. And New Zealand is, I think, the safest place on the planet in terms of coronavirus.
Yeah.
They have like the least cases because they're kind of this island off the coast of nowhere, and they're not. As soon as it was like a thing, they like shut down.
Yeah.
So that's probably the safest place to be. But at the same time, they're taking it easy. They don't want to get back into production, and then everybody gets sick. So, there was an untitled Goonies pilot, which I want to know more about.
Well, it's interesting with like seeing the list of all of the projects that got postponed. You see stuff that you didn't hear about, and you're like, wait, they're working on that? I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
Like the Goonies thing is a surprise, complete surprise.
Yeah. I know the show Superstore. I'm a fan of that show. I'm curious what they're going to do because they stopped like in mid-season filming it. And I know the main actress, she just got pregnant. So if they come back and one episode to the next, she's like 6 months more pregnant, it's going to be like really awkward and weird. So they might have to delay it even further because of
I
that.
have a feeling they'll just employ the typical, she's going to be holding something heavy in front of her stomach kind of a thing that they do whenever women get pregnant on TV.
It's a supermarket thing. It's a show about working in a superstore.
Mm-hmm.
So basically she could just be holding boxes, and she works behind a desk a lot too. So you never know. I'm sure there's a workaround, but there's also the shows from Marvel, Loki, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision. I believe Falcon and the Winter Soldier was pretty much done shooting, but post-production's even hard too because all these people are working from home. Usually they have offices to go to edit at.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-production of some of the other shows is probably fallen off a little bit. WandaVision was probably in the middle of production, so who knows how far that was. Loki had started filming, so I know that's cut off for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's better if it cuts off before you start filming, because then you can just kind of be like, all right, we're going to take off as soon as we're ready.
Right.
But if you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks into filming, that's a bad time to all of a sudden just step in and say, hey, we're going home, coming back later.
Well, because you have the potential of not being able to use any of the footage that you just shot. There is that potential when you take that long of a break of, life getting in the way, things getting in the way, it's anything happening to where you just can't use any of that footage. I mean, knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen for any of these productions, but that's definitely a fear for a lot of people.
Yeah. Speaking of fear, Fear the Walking Dead has also been delayed. The Walking Dead has been delayed. There's so many spin-off shows to The Walking Dead now. I think there's 2. There's another one that's being in the works too, of like a kids version, believe it or not. There's like a bunch of girls. I kid you not. So it's basically like a tween drama, right? but
I
also with
stop.
the devastation of zombies happening.
They have to stop. Just
Yeah.
stop.
So it's like pick a genre, just be in the genre you're in. If you want to tell different stories about a group that isn't the main core group of The Walking Dead, cool. Tell the stories about these young kids, but don't make it like a tween drama. Keep it. You still want to see The Walking Dead, what it is. But that show, I feel like I've fallen off that show. I haven't watched that in a really long time.
Yeah, me neither.
There's just so many. If you look, we're gonna post the link for this. You guys can check it out. It's basically, there's a show on TV. Yeah, it's delayed. Basically everything. Law and Order SVU, delayed. The Flash, delayed. Superman and Lois, delayed.
Eventually we're going to get to a point where there's nothing new for the first time in a long time.
The Price is Right is delayed. How do you delay The Price is Right? Come on.
We're just going to get back to a bunch of reruns, and but even though there's nothing new, there's so much content that people just end up getting sucked into things that they didn't have time for before.
Yeah, like really cool filmmaker podcasts that just started out.
Exactly.
There's also all the, late night hosts or hosting shows from home.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday Night Live, I know they did one episode at least of from home type of an episode, all via Zoom and all these weird skits and stuff. Let's see if we can get down to the movies. There were a couple of pilots that were being worked on that all just had to shut down right in the moment. Movies, the Avatar sequels were all being filmed. I think they're filming them all sequentially together. That got shut down. The Matrix 4 was like a week into production, I think, and then they shut down, which is the worst because basically that whole week is just, who knows if that can even be used,
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves gets a haircut and suddenly got to refilm the whole thing. That kind of movie can probably afford to change his hair and stuff, but
I have a feeling they'll be able to bounce back from any aesthetic changes that Keanu Reeves decides to do. But I think that movie will be okay.
Yeah, everybody's going to see The Matrix 4. I'm just upset because now I've also heard that because Keanu Reeves had The Matrix 4 and he had John Wick. Was it also John Wick 4?
I think so.
They were going to come out on the same day. And now they won't because one's production has been delayed further than the other one or something like that. But that would have been my Keanu Reeves hangout day. Whatever. The Batman, that's upsetting. I know they were mid-shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Jurassic World Dominion. That's a big one. A lot of that's green screen stuff, though. So those type of movies might be on the move sooner. If we're starting to reopen and stuff like that, those type of movies will be easier to do just in a studio with a green screen. 'Tis possible.
Yeah, depending on what guidelines and stuff they put in place for safe filming during social distancing and all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. Shang-Chi, which is a new Marvel movie that's coming with primarily Asian cast, which is really cool. He's basically Bruce Lee, but with superpowers. And the director wasn't feeling well, so they postponed the whole production pretty early on. The Little Mermaid getting a live-action remake from Disney. Didn't even know about that one.
You don't remember all the controversy about them picking a non-white Ariel?
Oh, yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
Get over it. She's a mermaid.
Right. Thank you.
She lives in the ocean. She could have been purple. Nobody knows.
But mermaids are white. Mermaids aren't real people.
Yeah. So. Mermaids are drawings.
Yeah.
Some guy had a fantasy one night and he was like, what if girls had fins? Give me a break.
Yeah.
Peter Pan was getting another movie because that really was necessary. All these movies too. Who knows what's going to happen with all these movies? Some of them might be taking such a financial hit. Investors getting caught up in coronavirus. They might be pulling out. They might be saying, I don't have the money for this anymore. And there goes all their finances. So who knows, when we come out of COVID, all these movies that are getting delayed, it's not just like everything's on hold and we're going to come out and it's just going to be back to normal. Some of these movies might fall to the wayside. Probably not all the bigger ones that we've been mentioning, but all the ones that I'm skipping over, things that people have never heard of, you know, that are new projects, Untitled Elvis project, you know.
Well, that one's not gonna, that's the one that Tom Hanks was working on.
Oh, I mean, if Tom Hanks is involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that one will be fine. But I do know what you're saying.
I mean, who knows? I think the real struggle is going to come in with the indie filmmaking industry, where all these indie filmmakers who've been getting by the skin of their teeth, who, you know, put like $3,000 together and make the best film that they can make for that. Those are the people that are going to struggle the most, because they're just all their resources and anything they could have squeezed out of life to get their film made, because they really have to push to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have to consider, like, what if somebody gets sick on my film set and, you know, catches coronavirus and then blames me because I asked them to come along as a favor to do this film, and now all of a sudden it's like, you know, it makes it really difficult, because, you know, even like when you see like Lionsgate put out a giant PDF of some of their safety precautions they're going to take, like you're going to have to do a little test before you can come on the lot type of stuff every day.
Mm-hmm.
And indie film sets, anything smaller than a massive Hollywood production, you can't do that. You just don't have the time. You don't have the resources to make that happen. So it's going to be really tough on the indie filmmaking industry. And I feel like the indie industry was kind of coming up a little bit because it was so accessible and easy to get certain equipment. It used to be really difficult to get a high-end camera, and now you can probably get one that's at least passable, or at least can get a really great image for a couple $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, now that all those things are accessible and people might have them, you still can't make the movie now.
There's no margin of error on an indie film set. You don't have the time or the financial resources to be able to shut down and take your time with filming. And because a lot of times on indie films, you know, people are taking a pay cut to do them, if you can even afford to pay them at all, depending on the resources to extend for as long as you would need to, and to take your time and, you know, split up the crew so that you have enough social distancing. And there's just no margin of error, which is the scary thing. Like it's been running on rails straightforward for so long, and now it had to hit the brakes so hard. It's going to be interesting to see how the indie film industry kind of pulls itself out of this.
Yeah. Segue into our next thing, because there's new industries still coming out of the woodwork. Who knows how it's going to be affected by COVID, but Robert De Niro is launching his own film studio. He bought a lot in Astoria, Queens, called Wildflower Studios for $72 million. This was a little while ago, but they're still putting it together. They said their construction was going to start in the summer. I'm sure that's not going to happen right now.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, while they're still making it tougher for small indie companies to do anything, COVID is, you know, probably not going to stop Robert De Niro from making this lot eventually.
I don't think he's wanted to do that for a long time. I forgot he bought or tried to buy land down in Brooklyn to create a studio like years ago, and that fell through. And I know he's been wanting to do this for a really, really long time. So I have a feeling it will eventually go through. It just might get delayed a little bit, but it'll happen.
Who knows what kind of movies he's going to put together too. I mean, Robert De Niro, when you think about him, you don't think about his weird movies, but he has done a couple weird movies. Like Bad Grandpa, or that wasn't him. That was something else, wasn't it?
Was that the one with what's his name from High School Musical?
With Zac Efron. Not Bad Grandpa, but it's something similar. Bad Grandpa is with Johnny Knoxville.
Okay.
But Robert De Niro did a movie where he's like an old man and is trying to party during spring break with his grandson or nephew or something like that, who is Zac Efron, and Aubrey Plaza is involved, and it just gets weird. Anytime Aubrey Plaza is involved, it gets weird pretty fast. So I forget what movie it is. Let's find it. I'm curious now. Dirty Grandpa. So
Dirty
close.
Grandpa. So Grandpa's still in the title.
Grandpa's still in the title. What a break off. I'm sure he was just like, I just want to do a weird movie. Because Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, The Irishman, Joker, Godfather Part 2. He was in Godfather Part 2?
Yeah, he played it, the young Don Corleone back in Italy.
Really? Why don't I remember that? That's crazy. Now I gotta watch all the Godfather movies. Raging Bull, Casino, and then Dirty Grandpa. What a turn. Bronx Tale. Just somebody who's put out all such big quality movies over the years. Though it might not be my favorite movies, I do love some of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that the studio is going to put out some bangers, some really great movies, and possibly also provide a lot of us actors and filmmakers in the Astoria area with jobs, which would be great, especially after COVID, but I'm sure that this site will not be built for a little while. Probably going to take a minute. I would imagine that if they had been able to start in the summer construction, it's probably going to take a year to build a whole film studio.
Well, and it might take even longer than that. It might just be building it like piecemeal, like getting one section ready to go so that they can start making money back and then keep building the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, if you got Robert De Niro money, though, you can do it however quick or slow that you want.
Mm-hmm.
So he could say, I need it done in 6 months, and it'll be done. If he says, I want it done, but take your time, I don't care if it's ready in 5 years because I'm Robert De Niro, I can do whatever the fuck I want. That's also going to be fine, too.
I mean, you also got to think, though, Robert De Niro is not a spring chicken, as we saw with The Irishman, so he might want to get it done sooner rather than later.
Yeah, some of those Irishman scenes are a little rough because he's supposed to be like a 30-year-old guy in some of those scenes, and he stands up and he's like, all right, here I go, up. And he's like struggling, and you're like, I know he looks like he's supposed to be 30, but he's moving around like he's 70.
Yep.
And I remember seeing an interview where they actually talked about that, and it was kind of funny and awkward because they had to go to Robert De Niro and be like, you're not 70 in this shot. You got to get up with a little spring to your step. And he's like, all right, hold on. Let me just de-age my body. Like, the fuck you want me to do? But yeah, hopefully that studio does still come together. I'm sure they're experiencing the delays just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
But you never know what kind of movies are going to get spawned out of this COVID stuff going on. Our last current event of sorts is a list of 5 movies that came out of the 1930s during the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm. So
we were talking too about the possibility of like what movies in 100 years from now are we going to look back on that we're like, oh, remember coronavirus? Remember all those movies that came out during coronavirus? Remember those? So I'm wondering if there's going to be like a weird podcast in the future that people are watching and it's just holograms of people talking about movies.
I mean, some of the movies that came out during the Great Depression are some of Hollywood's biggest movies of all time. Yeah. I mean, Gone with the Wind, that movie was huge. Wizard of Oz, The Adventures of Robin Hood, I think for the longest time, I don't know if it still holds this title, but was the most expensive movie to ever be made. If you look at the budget, they had a $1 million budget or something insane for 1930 in the 1930s for during the Depression. So if you put the inflation into it and what it would cost today, it was a ridiculous amount. So for the longest time, that was the most expensive movie to ever get made.
Our movies, at one point or another too, I'm sure that the filmmakers had to feel a little guilty when they were like, all right, we have this massive budget. It's the biggest budget film ever made so far. The year is 1930 something. And there's millions of people dying in the streets. But we can really make this Robin Hood story stand out. They got to think like, maybe we could buy 1 million loaves of bread, Nobody thought. But still, pretty crazy, all the quality movies that came out of this really dark time. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, one of the oldest Disney movies out there.
It was their first full-length color feature film.
That's pretty wild. because I think Snow White, I don't think something from 1937, any of the old Disney movies too, I think of them like maybe the 80s or 90s they came out. And then you're like, oh no, Snow White, 37. Holy shit. But that's pretty wild. The only other movie on the list is The Invisible Man. Came out in 1933. I think that's the oldest one.
And they made a remake of already with Elizabeth Moss.
Yeah, but is that the same idea, same concept? I feel like the newest one was like a horror movie.
The original one was a horror movie.
Was it? I never saw it. I mean, it's 1933.
So there was a thought for a while of taking all of the Universal classic horror movies, Dracula, Frankenstein, Invisible Man, and redoing them in current and kind of almost releasing like a Marvel Cinematic Universe, kind of the way they did.
I'm sorry, are you referencing The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
I am not. I am not referencing that film. I'm saying what they wanted to do was like remake all of these great titles from the 30s and set them in present day, but it didn't work out so well. They did a Frankenstein. I don't know if it was the same idea or people behind it, but they redid Frankenstein with Aaron Eckhart, and that didn't go over very well.
Yeah, I think they attached a bunch of big names after that, though, and they said, like, we have Johnny Depp playing I think he was the Invisible Man, wasn't he? Russell Crowe was going to be Jekyll and Hyde, or something like that. Like, they had a really big cast, and then I think Johnny Depp hit some very public drama with his wife Amber Heard, and Frankenstein didn't do too well, and it's just kind of fallen to the wayside. I haven't heard anything else about it.
No, I mean, because the idea kind of stopped, but the original Invisible Man from the 30s was from like that whole Universal like horror genre, the original Frankenstein with Boris Karloff and all that stuff. But that just goes to prove that sometimes you can't. It was perfect for the time it was made in, and if you try and update it now, it's not going to be as impactful. I think they should leave well enough alone. I think they did a good job with The Mummy in the late 90s and early 2000s. Leave it at that. Let it go.
Yeah. Sometimes if there's going to be reboots, people are going to reboot things, but you have to update it for the times in the proper way. If you try to make it, the same way as it was, it can be rocky because the times are different. You're telling a movie that should have existed 50 years ago, and it just doesn't make any sense now. So sometimes it's a little tricky. But you never know what's going to hit. Some people are going to respond well to different movies.
Yeah.
Rocky certainly stands out because it came out of nowhere. I don't think people were expecting a big boxing movie like that. And it kind of changed the game a little bit. I don't know what movie's going to come out of this time period in 100 years from now, are people going to look back and say, remember, I don't even know what came out.
Trolls World Tour.
Trolls World Tour. That piece of cinematic history that we all remember. A couple other movies that came out and just got crushed because of the box office shutting down, like Bloodshot with Vin Diesel. Mulan was about to come out. Black Widow was about ready to come out. So it's a little tough. All these movies are getting delayed, pushed back. They're going to lose money. People are going to stop giving money towards movies because they're going to be like, look, non-essential. Movies are great, but they're not essential.
Well, I don't think the major Hollywood will ever hit that.
Yeah, there's stuff around the indie filmmakers. We got to stick together. We have to band together, and maybe there should be like a club or a group. A bunch of filmmakers in the Astoria area should come together, unite, and oh shit! You know what? There's the AFC. There's the Filmmakers Club, the Astoria Filmmakers Club. Oh, that's so crazy. I wasn't even thinking about it. Oh my God, that's why.
And on that note, thank you to Phil Cappadora, our day player, for joining us today, giving us a little insight into his journey as an actor, how he came to found the Astoria Filmmakers Club, and bring to you such amazing content such as the AFC Podcast.
Yes.
And thank you for suggesting the film Rocky for us today, too.
Yeah, thank you, Phil. Make sure you guys stay tuned for future episodes. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. And we will see you guys next time.